Hi, welcome to the 2018 edition of the African Utility Week. My name is Nicholas Nede, content editor at ESI Africa. Today, I have Tony Tiyou, CEO of Renewables in Africa. Welcome, Tony.
Thank you very much, Nicola. It's a pleasure for me to be here with you.
It's a pleasure, same with I. We have seen recently that you have conducted a study on wind energy adoption in Africa. What were your key findings in the study?
Okay, that's a very interesting question. First of all, I want to say that was the first book ever written on wind energy in Africa. There has been a report done by the AFDB before, but not going extensively in what I have been doing. Okay. So now coming back into your question, so for the finding we had three key findings, I would say. First of all, so we're talking about a small market in relative terms when you compare it to the global market. Because at the moment, the cumulative capacity, it's about 4.5. It is less than 1%. Yeah, because if you're looking at the global market, the GWEC has recently published a report, and the global capacity is 539 gigawatts. So we're looking at a very small market here in Africa. So that's the first finding. Then the second one that we can see is the market is actually located in two regions per se. So you have North Africa, which is, by the way, the historical market. If you're combining the likes of Egypt, Morocco, and Tunisia, so you have over 2 gigawatts of wind project installed and currently operational, right? And this market is actually followed closely by the Southern Africa, which is now the leader. And when I say Southern Africa, to be more precise, so I mean South Africa is South Africa. Yeah, put it that way. Yeah, it's a big economy, which is actually the market leader now. So we've also over 2 gigawatts of wind project installed and operational. So that's the second key finding. The third key finding, it's about the cost. So what we observe, although no, let's say, extensive study has been carried out on the cost of wind in Africa, because like I said, the market is relatively small. We're talking about roughly 100 projects in Africa. But what we can say though, looking at what has been done here in South Africa, is wind is competitive with solar. So if you compare, for example, the cost of wind from window one, or the bid window one, RIPPP program, to the bid window 4, the cost has dramatically dropped by about 60%. So 1.5 Rand towards, let's say, 0.6. So that's the third key finding. And that's what we can see. Yeah.
Okay. So are these findings in par with the global trends?
Another very good question. I think you're very excellent today, Nicholas. So what I would say is yes or no. Let me explain. So again, a recent report by the GWEC, which is obviously the body that is combining all the wind projects across the world, in their report, what they were finding is, if we compare the capacity compared to last year, or the year before they did it, which was 2016, so 2017 compared to 2016, there has been a progression of 11%. Yeah, that's on the capacity. So we've gone from 489, I believe, or 487 to 539. That's roughly about 11%. If you compare that with what we had in Africa, according to some database that we have done, the Renewables in Africa, and some other people, so we've moved from 4.1 to 4.5. So that's also roughly approximately, we're talking about 10% increase. So 10% for Africa, 11% for the world. However, for Africa, I would say if you compare that with the previous decade, between 2010 and 2011, 2000 and 2010, we had about 41% increase. So if you look at an average, that's about 4% for year. So that means from this side, yes. The reason I say yes and no, because actually the majority of wind projects in Africa happened in 7 years, between 2011 and 2017. And there, you had an increase about 400%, basically. So compared to that, we actually slowed down. But looking at the global market, about that.
Okay. I don't think Africa is going to be such a big market compared to economies like the US, whereby utilities by themselves, they can implement very large wind projects. Most of the projects being implemented here, they are at small scale. Is there a commercial model for small scale wind projects in Africa?
So when you say small, I guess you're talking about less than 1 megawatt, right?
Yeah.
Okay, if you're talking about 1 megawatts, most likely we're gonna have what? One or two turbine, roughly, that's what we're talking about. Yeah. And in terms of the wind regime, that's a class 4, that's 6 megawatt per second. So if you're looking at that, you can't really realize economy of scale, right? So that's very clear. So if you want to be using that solution, my recommendation would be to definitely make sure that you are in a region where there is enough wind. Yeah, that's what I say. So you can also make sure that you can use wind as a complementary resources. You complement that with maybe the grid of solar to create your model, right? So that's what we can see with the current design. However, what I always strongly advise, actually the model that we see nowadays with the horizontal axis is not the only one. I will encourage, let's say, those small scale projects to look at other design where we had like the vertical axis, where you have the blades, you know, collecting wind from the 360 degrees, you know, and you have that versatility. And this, for me, it's maybe the best way for you to see if you can create a solution for small scale projects.
Okay, Mr. Tony, thank you for your time. I'm getting that signal that we are running out of time.
I probably talked a bit too much, but it was a pleasure.
No,
Great.
not really. You're sharing your insights. Thank you for your time and for sharing your insights with our readers. I wish you a pleasant rest of the UW experience. And to our viewers, thank you for watching. Bye for now.